Welcome to Tea Time with Dan. How are you doing, my friend?
Tea Time with Dan.
We are going to find out a little bit about you.
Okay, great.
And a little bit about your connection to Far Cry, obviously,
Okay.
but also your history in video games.
Yeah.
When did you get started?
Oh man, I went to school for just basically like VFX and things like that, and learned soft image in like 99, I think. And then I ended up working in Toronto in the film and television industry for about 5 years. And then I made the switch to games probably about 15 years ago.
Okay.
I think. I got a chance to work on James Bond Nightfire and kind of got hooked. I was working on cinematics and it was super fun. And so I made the transition out of film and television into games, and I haven't looked back.
That was a gorgeous game.
Yeah, it was cool.
Nightfire.
It was very cool, yeah.
And so you worked with teams at EA or with...
No, so what they did is it was pretty cool because we were a house that was basically working on shots for films or for commercials or whatever else.
Sure.
And then basically EA called us up and said, hey, look, would you guys be interested in working on some of this stuff in the same way that you do shots for films or for television? It was like, okay, cool. I had no clue what I was doing for cinema in terms of that, but it was a really cool learning experience. And because I was a gamer at the time, I had this feeling like, you know what, this is going to explode. Like, it felt like the systems that you would use were starting to see parity from the other things that we were using for film and television. I was like, this just sounds cool.
Yeah.
I get to take something that I love to do, I get to apply it to work, make the change, and I did, and it was great.
So you had already started to work in the film and television industry,
Yes.
and you had
Yep.
made the conscious choice that
Yep.
I'm going to make this leap. I'm going to pursue this dream. I don't know where this is going to lead.
I had no idea where it was going to go.
Right, because games could have crashed and burned.
Exactly.
And all of this effort
Yep.
to try to embellish and create these stories could
Yep.
have gone nowhere.
Yep.
What was it about games? Why did you like them so much?
I think it's a pretty big escape. Like
Yeah.
you pick up, you watch a film, and I love film. It's fantastic, but it's something where you connect with that material for about an hour and 50 minutes,
Right.
and it's gone.
Right.
And you can have a deep moment in film, and you can do that in following television series. And for sure, you look at what's on television now, and there is great stuff on TV now.
Absolutely, yeah.
But with games, you get to actually be in it. You get to actually rotate the camera. You get to direct it yourself. And that's something that just hooked me. I just couldn't get enough of it. And I think that's why I also gravitate towards first person.
Right.
Because it really does feel like you are there. It
Right.
feels like it's you. So it's that's something where for me, as soon as I got connected with Far Cry and started telling the story of the player in the world with the teams that we have here, it's been fantastic.
Did I ever tell you the definition of insanity?
Were you a Canadian working in the States when you made the leap to video games, or were
I
you
was
an
a-
American that had moved to
No,
Canada?
I was a Canadian working in Toronto, and
Yeah.
then I made the leap to move to games down in the States.
Yeah.
And was down there for about 9 years. Got a chance to work on a bunch of cool titles, and then got a call from Ubi, and basically said, "Hey, look, we want you to come up and check it out." And I'd never really thought about coming back to Canada, and I was
Yeah.
like, "All right, let's check it out. Let's
Yeah.
give it a try."
Yeah.
Came up, and the studio is massive.
Yeah.
Right. And you
And
walk
this was 10 years ago.
in. So, yeah,
Because
seven years ago.
Well,
yeah.
it's way more massive
Yeah, it's
now.
huge
Yes,
now, right? So
yeah.
I came in and it was like, okay, this is huge. And I didn't really have an imagination for how big it was. And then you step onto the floor and it's just a sea of people.
Yeah.
And you realize just how big, how important, how much responsibility there is to it.
Yeah.
And it really does feel like you're riding this huge wave, and that you could fall off at any time, but
Yeah.
there's something terrifying and also fantastic about it.
Are you saying that in terms of the risks, the financial risks that Ubisoft takes with the video game creative?
It's more just that when you're dealing with a game this size, or you're dealing with teams this size, there's a lot of work and there's a lot of effort put in to make sure that everybody's kind of rowing in the same direction. But at the same time, what you want to be able to do is make sure that people can input. It's not one person making the game. It's not one brain making the game.
Yeah.
It's a ton of really talented people.
Right.
And what you have to be able to do with creative is you have to be able to kind of set a direction and then be okay with where the wind takes you.
Right.
You have to be, if you feel like you're going to be in control of every detail, it's going to disappoint you very, very quickly.
Is it a different environment, a different sort of way of working at Ubisoft than Day One had prepared you for, or Ravensoft had prepared you for?
I think so, just in terms of the scale.
Yeah.
The scale of Ubi's is just so big, and there's also a feeling of when you think about even the simplicity of, or the action of writing for the game, right? And working on the game. Because of the scale and because of the size of the world that we're building and just how generous the open world is, it takes an army of writers to pull this off.
Right.
So you're gonna make kind of a social contract with some of these writers and say, guys, there's a chance I may never see this character. There's a chance we may not really understand how this character perfectly plugs into the meta, but that's okay because there are also going to be micro stories in the world. So just have some fun with it, come up with something that's interesting, and tell me what you're passionate about. And as soon as you start to talk to people about, guys, just have fun with it. Tell us what this character's about, tell us what this story's about, tell us what this opportunity's about, or just play with the systems and have it feed into the anecdote factory, people start to light up and people start to come up with stuff that we would have never thought possible.
And I guess that feeds into all kinds of different ways that fans can intersect with the fiction of Far Cry. Maybe some that you guys haven't developed yet, comic books or TV shows or whatever, but all of this work is not for naught.
No, we're building a universe, and we're building a universe that, with each title, you look back at what you have, and the kind of the bucket of stuff that you have gets bigger and bigger, and you can pull from it.
Right.
And what I really like about Far Cry, what I really enjoyed about the franchise, is that it's so flexible that it has an opportunity for people to contribute to it, and that every single time that we come up with a creative or we start talking about a creative and somebody goes, I don't know if that seems plausible, or if I don't know if that seems reasonable, or there's an opportunity on Far Cry to explore it in a way that I think that other brands and other games maybe have restrictions put on them that we don't have.
Right. Yeah, you basically get to wipe the slate clean every single time.
Every time, if we want to.
That's great. What was it about the work that you were doing at Raven that got Yugi to call you?
I think it was more that I was in cinema. I was working in cinema, and I was working as an art director. And then I started to make the change towards more production and going into sort of just focusing on leadership of people and working with larger teams. And I think that that's a good question. I don't know why they called me. I don't know what it was specifically, but I think that what was really interesting was at the time, I don't know that Far Cry was really was considered a premier brand.
Right.
And I think that there was a moment where I was talking to a buddy and I was like, yeah, they called me for up at UB Montreal. And the guy goes, awesome, it's Assassin's Creed? And I go, no man, it's Far Cry. And he goes,
oh yeah.
What the hell? And since then, we've actually taken the brand and we've really grown it.
Do we want to stop and say no offense to Clint Hawking right now?
yeah, for sure. Okay. Clint's a good guy.
Yes.
Clint's a really good guy. But it was really funny because I think that the brand, AC was just so big.
Sure it was, yeah.
And I think that Far Cry 2, I played the shit out of that game.
It was amazing.
I love that game.
Yeah.
But in terms of when you look at it, at the time, AC was so huge, and Far Cry was just not huge yet.
Yeah.
And I think what happened is that there was just that moment where everybody kind of came together. People who'd worked on Far Cry 2, people who'd worked on AC, people who were thinking about Watch Dogs, came together to work on this game, and we made Far Cry 3, and it was just this great moment.
Well, I think Far Cry really wasn't Ubi's yet.
Right.
With Far Cry 2.
Right.
I mean, it went through that whole reinvention phase. Far Cry 1 was, what's the studio again?
I think that was Crytek, right?
Yeah, Crytek had that. They launched this thing that was absolutely, out of nowhere wonderful.
Yeah.
And then Clint and his team did an amazing job with Far Cry 2. There were
that was a damn good game.
So many cool systems, but it was totally different than Far Cry 1, and it wasn't made by Crytek. And I think you guys really needed to ship Far Cry 3 to say this is ours, and we believe in it, and we're going to make, AAA quality, top tier content with Far Cry.
It's it's funny because when I think back on the time, I think I remember it with a false sense of everything was easy and everything was not easy. It was tough to come in and work on Far Cry 3. That's probably one of the toughest games I've ever worked on.
Right.
But the team really had sort of this underdog mentality.
Right.
And I remember going to that first E3 and showing up, and the booth that we were in like a supply closet in the back.
Wow.
And nobody was expecting us to show up and become something big. And by the end of E3, the lineups were like 200, 300, 400 people long. And it was a great story of kind of the little engine that could. And then from there, we just kept growing it. But the thing is that it is all rooted in the work that was done before.
Right.
It is all rooted in the systems that were done before and the brains that applied it. And so what we did is just sort of took that and moved the ball a little further.
Absolutely. And you made Michael Mando a global superstar
Well,
with
here's
that
the
video
thing.
game.
Let's be clear about this.
Yeah.
Michael Mando didn't need our help.
No,
to be
he's
a global-
amazing.
The guy is amazing. The guy
But
is a...
I think there is no denying that cover placement
Yep.
and his incredible performance in a video game
Yep.
turned a lot of heads out
agree.
there in the world. I think he
I
would
agree.
say that too.
Yeah, it was really one of those things where I don't know that we knew what we had,
Yeah.
but as soon as we saw Boss, and as soon as we saw that, no, please, and all that stuff that he did as you're sitting in the cenote,
Yeah.
It was spooky, it was eerie, and it also, it created something where we know that villains are a big part of what we do now, right?
Yeah.
And the work that Troy did on Far Cry 4,
Yeah.
the work that Greg's doing on Far Cry 5, we know that villains are such a huge part of what we build. So
Yeah.
I think it definitely started with Michael Mando's talent, and then the writing on Far Cry 3 to bring to life a character that was spooky.
Do you think we would ever see Voss come back? Is that a possibility?
Never say never.
Yeah.
I would love to see that. I think Mike's pretty busy right now.
He
I think
is.
He's very busy.
He's the damn scorpion.
Yeah,
now.
I know. That's super cool. But yeah, I think that there's always an opportunity. What's nice about the stuff that we built is that there are, as I said before, there's this bucket of characters now. And so we look to it as we start to think about, would this character from 3 now somehow be in Montana? Would this character from 4 be available? And we start to think about it as a universe, which is not something we could do before.
Right. Yeah, you are collecting a rogues gallery now,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Which is unbelievable.
Yeah.
Well, take me into the sort of concept. How does it work at UB when you're conceiving things? Like, is it you walking around Montreal, your hands in your pockets, rubbing your beard, going, "What the hell are we going to do next?" Or is it you're sitting in a room and you have 5 other people with you, and you're throwing a bunch of things up on the whiteboard and you're rubbing them off and saying, "What the hell are you thinking?" Like, how do you do it?
It's interesting because I think it changes every time.
Okay.
Right? I don't think it's if somebody's watching this and thinking, okay, there's a science to this. There is no science to this. I think what happens is that it's born of conversation. It's born of different people with different ideas, and for me, I was just manic about bringing Far Cry to the States. It was something that I was not going to let go.
Right.
And I just kept having this sort of reoccurring thought about almost not a modern Western, but something of that ilk, and just this, watching those old films of Clint Eastwood on that horse, looking down over a town and looking at the population sign that's been shot up, and knowing the whole story from that. There was something about hope there for me. And so when we started to talk about it, I would throw out a fair amount of big sort of meta ideas, and then other ideas would come back, and then we had a ton of smart people coming back and talking about all the different things that we could do. For Far Cry 5, what I did was I basically went away for Christmas 3 odd years ago, and I wrote about 25,000 words about what I thought the game was about.
Wow.
Just a tome of stuff.
But
from
no
characters.
setting?
No setting.
You knew Montana right away.
We knew the West.
The West,
But
okay.
I wasn't specifically thinking about just Montana. I was
Okay.
thinking about something that was kind of out in the West. And since I'd spent a lot of time in Calgary and Edmonton, and I was out in that area, I kind of had a feeling for that space.
Yeah.
But it was specifically focused on the characters and the cult. And then the feeling of this town that had kind of been overrun. And there was other elements to it, and then basically bringing that back and talking to people about it, talking about the different things that could be with the Anecdote Factory, talking about the value of, we got, some of the folks who are focused on just taking elements and adding new systems to what we already have in Dunya are coming back with, look, the plane is super fun, and take a look at this dog, take a look at the opportunity for this dog, and Boomer was born. And so you start to put all of that into the systems of the Anecdote Factory, and you kind of stir it with the cult, and you kind of stir it with the stories, and that's pretty much how it was born. I can't think back to a single time or a single thing where it was like, we're going to make a game in Montana, it's going to have a cult in it, it's going to have the father.
Right.
It was more of collaboration.
We were given so much. This land, this life, our freedom.
Is your wife a sounding board, or is there a non-UB employee that you can
I'll
throw
put
an
it this
idea
way.
off?
My wife says that I play video games for a living.
Okay.
That's how that works.
That's probably the healthy way to approach this,
yes,
right?
she doesn't
And she's
care what I
patient
do.
that
Yeah.
you're here with us on a Saturday,
Very patient.
talking about your
Very
job.
patient.
Yes.
While I'm playing video games
Yes.
on Saturday. She does not care at all what I do.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of people at work who you can chat with and talk with, and you maybe will hear a little bit about what's going on in AC, you'll maybe hear a little bit about what's going on in another game, and there's just tons and tons of inputs to creativity. It's very cool.
So you go through this process, you write the 25,000 words, you bring it back. Who is the team? What's the size of the group that you present this idea to?
There's a core team usually.
Yeah.
A core team of somebody who handles the technology, somebody who handles the gameplay, the narrative, the art, the realization, the cinematography of it, and you kind of sit down with those folks and go, look, here's what I'm thinking. What are you thinking?
Yeah.
And the thing is that I'm off writing what I'm writing.
Yeah.
They're off writing what they're writing.
Okay.
So it's very collaborative. You
Okay.
sit into a room and you
Okay.
come down and they go, hey, there's this and there's that, and you kind of look at it all and go, what can we make with this? And it doesn't take long because the ideas are so strong. It doesn't take long before you start to go, this is pretty powerful.
Awesome.
There's something really tangible here.
You have the deepest voice in video games, and you're about 7'5". Does anybody?
That's why this cup looks so incredibly small. What the hell?
Does anybody have the guts to say no? I don't like that idea, Dan.
Oh, for sure. Are you
Yes.
kidding me? Absolutely. The other thing too about being an artist is that you have no clue how, like, there's a ton of egos.
Yeah.
And I don't think ego is aware of the size of the person that it comes in. I
Right.
think that everybody's smart in there.
Yeah, because it's about this, right?
It's totally
and,
about
and,
that.
and honestly, that's what makes video games so amazing. Is
Right.
why they impact with everybody that sort
Right.
of is tuned to them.
Yep.
Because it's about this, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to be pretty. You don't
No,
have
no,
to be
exactly.
Yeah.
You just show up, and if you've got a big brain, and
Yeah.
you have the ability to articulate your ideas, and candidly, not even that.
Yeah.
If you just have a good idea,
Yeah.
people are going to look at it and see it for what it is.
Sure.
And then there's a lot of collaboration. Now, I think the danger of an interview like this is that it sounds like it's super easy, or it sounds like there's no tension, or
Right.
of course there is. Of course people disagree, and of course people.
Ubisoft's going to send us some of that footage, though, right? So we'll be able to run that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. There'll be a dog playing in the background, people having a picnic. It'll be fantastic. But what's nice about it is that it's all designed in terms of whether or not we agree or disagree to move the thing forward and make it as good as it can be.
Right.
And I think everybody truly is chasing a similar goal, which is when you pick up the pad and you begin to play the game, that it is the most generous, immersive, interesting opportunity for
Yeah.
you to play
Yeah.
and enjoy.
Yeah.
And that we also recognize is that a ton of different people are going to play this game.
Yeah.
And they're going to play it for different reasons. They're going to get different levels of enjoyment out of it and different ways of enjoying it. And you cannot author it for one experience.
Right.
We have to make a game where stuff can happen in it that we didn't even know was possible.
You've got the number 5 after this game.
Yep.
And there's a danger with every sequel of diminishing the impact of the franchise. We've just seen Assassin's Creed take a tremendously valuable and important break for that franchise.
Mm-hmm.
And we will find out soon if people come lining and screaming back to Assassin's Creed
Which
Origins.
I absolutely think they will.
I've played some. I can't wait to
Yeah,
play more.
for sure.
But, the public does get tired and
Sure.
burnt out a little
Yep.
bit. Is there, or was there ever a moment with Far Cry where you guys said, maybe this is a different thing with Far Cry 5. Maybe this is not Far Cry. Maybe this is a totally new franchise.
No, that's interesting. I mean, I don't want to give you I'm allowed to swear on this, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I don't
Yeah.
want to give you the bullshit answer of, no, we were completely always thinking about this one thing.
Yeah.
We're humans. I think it almost sometimes feels like it's a band and everybody wants to make their own hit single and then come back. And
Yeah.
I think that the nice thing about Far Cry is that every time you try and stretch a little and see if it's restrictive, it's not. And it actually stretches a little further than you thought it would, which means that if ever I've had the feeling, or ever any of the folks on the team have had the feeling of, let's do something different, the question is, okay, let's do something different on Far Cry.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, well, let's plumb the depths of that. Well, let's put it in the States. Let's make it about this topic. Let's put a brand new thing into it. Let's put it 12,000 years in the past, and let's make it about being the Beastmaster.
Right.
Well, you can't do that. Why? Walk me through why.
Yeah.
Walk me through no.
Yeah.
And the answer is, well, yeah, we could. So I don't think anybody expected us to do the things that we've been doing on the brand. And I think that every single time we kind of poke at it or prod or try and break out of the box that we're in, we realize we're not in a box at all.
Right on.
So for now, I'm not thinking about anything else other than where can we go next? What can we do next? And I'm also thinking about things that are bigger than the game itself.
Right.
Like you thinking about moving outside of that, thinking about television, thinking about film, thinking about it as an experience. We really have matured to the point where the stories that we're telling are something that's enticing to multiple sources of media.
Well, and that's the line that Ubisoft is sort of following right now.
Right.
They want to be more than just a video game company. They want to be a full media company. It didn't work so well with the Assassin's Creed movie, but they want to get into that space, right?
The thing that's really cool about it, though, is that when you think about the people that we have in the buildings across the world, think about all the different groups that we have, we've got a lot of talent that comes from those different pools.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so when you start kicking around the idea of should we be making a film, should we be making a series, should we be doing something like Lost or something interesting like that, there's a ton of people who go, well, this is how we did it, or this is what we're thinking, and there's a lot of help.
Yes.
So I think that the pedigree is there. I think that the want is there. The time for us to think about it is definitely not there.
Yeah, and I think also one of the things that we just saw with Assassin's Creed, and I've seen with the Ghost Recon live action stuff, is sometimes there's just, and some of the other projects, I think the most successful thing that I've seen actually is Assassin's Creed Embers, which was absolutely a perfect use of this gorgeous franchise in a new direction that surprised everybody. We see this with the comic book stuff, we see this with everything that is just too adherent to the source, you know, and too connected to the source. And I think that same thing that you're talking about with Far Cry being a blank slate every single time could also be applied to the way that you craft a Far Cry film.
Oh, I think so.
Right? I mean, you don't have to throw in Michael Mando in the cameo to appease an audience.
Right.
You can still make a very cool show in that universe.
Yep.
And maybe it's not even branded in the same way because of the freedoms that you've built for yourself with this franchise.
It's possible. I mean, I think that the days of going that, all right, we want to make a Far Cry movie and it's got to have a Hawaiian shirt in it are over.
Yeah.
And
there was a Far Cry movie.
Yeah.
I totally forgot.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There was.
Yes.
We'll leave that there.
Okay.
That's a big cup conversation.
Yeah.
That's not a little cup conversation. So I think that those days are over, and occasionally, you know, sometimes we'll run across somebody who goes, oh yeah, we should go back to that, or we should do whatever. But I think that right now, as a brand, we're realizing just how big we've gotten. We're realizing that we're a pillar of Ubisoft, and we've come a long way. And so now it's just about, all right, take a break.
Yeah.
Get a little bit of rest, and now how can we grow it even further?
Right.
How can we push it even further?
Right.
And there's a lot of cool ideas on the table. There's a lot of different things that we talk about, but I definitely want to test the brand's limits.
Like, how do you feel about this new technology that we get to play with for games, like the Xbox One X and the PlayStation 4 Pro and 4K PCs? Are we pushing the boundaries with a Far Cry 5? Are we at the upper edge of what these systems can deliver? I know you've got incredible draw distance when you're up in the plane and stuff. Or is there still a lot more roadway?
I think it's an interesting question from the standpoint of how far do you go. The bottom line is we're still a shooter, so we want the experience to be pretty buttery when you play. And so that focuses our efforts on things, right? So as much as we talk about narrative and as much as we talk about all the things that you can do in the open world, we also have to be cognizant of is that if you're a shooter fan, you want to be able to pick up the controller and you want to be able to have a really solid experience.
Yes.
So we have to kind of kern our thoughts towards that and think about that all the time. But as I look forward, and as long as we keep the elements of the shooter and we keep the elements of being able to make it so that the player can go out into the world and deal with that and be able to have a great shooter experience, the technology that's growing is allowing us to bring in a whole bunch of new stuff.
Right.
Right. We're able to go to the skies. We're able to go underwater. We're able to put in pets. They're able to be responsive. We're able to give you guns for hire, thanks for hire. We're able to give you co-op. And as we're starting to write these stories and starting to make them more complex and more of them and more characters, you're able to give a lot more. The trick for me is that when you give more, just make sure that it's meaningful.
Right.
The danger of more is that it becomes a buffet.
And, well, I mean, we see that too. That sort of burnout with all the icons on a map can be a little daunting, you know, especially for game reviewers. Woe is me, but it's a ton of stuff to do sometimes. And I guess that's one of the challenges of design, right? You've got to make each one of those icons
meaningful.
Right.
And yes, you want to entice with generosity, but if you end up getting to those points on the map and they don't deliver on something, or you don't learn anything. I think that's probably the biggest thing for me whenever I'm tackling a game, or I'm tackling or exploring a subject, is, you know, it is entertainment. And what you want to be able to do when you're either reading a book, or reading a comic book, or a graphic novel, or you're listening to something on the radio, or you're hearing a story that your buddy's telling you, is you want to be enthralled, and you want to be captivated, and you want to be taken away with that story. And so I also want to learn something, right? I want to be able to watch Game of Thrones and see that the minds behind it are creating scenarios that are beyond my imagination.
Right.
And it's down to the simplest detail. Like, I think about the torture scene with the rat in the bucket. Not to give too much away, but I'm like, what are they doing with the bucket? And what's the rat for? And then what's the thing? I don't know. What is that? And then you look at it and you go, that is beyond my imagination. And there's little things like that where you're like, it took somebody thinking about the logistics of that. It took somebody thinking about how that works to be able to give you a moment where there was a mystery that was going to be solved in a horrible way later, where you learn something new, you see something interesting, and it's beyond your imagination.
All those what you just referenced there with Game of Thrones is a perfect example. That's a show that we all are hooked on, I think, or we can all agree, right? Everybody's hooked on it. But it's you get something out of an hour. You get something out of the totality of the season, but you get something out of an hour. And I think one of the mistakes that video games really make is they don't remember the busy people. They don't remember the casual people, the busy people that want to get ensconced in a video game, that don't have 12 hours to play at a spell. You know? Sometimes I feel like that because I have other responsibilities too, other than just reviewing the video game. And I feel like that's an element of design that needs to kind of be addressed.
So you can snack.
You can get something out of an hour or 2 hours and feel like progress is being made. Is that something that, and I think Far Cry's done a pretty decent job of that, but is that something that you're also focusing on going forward?
It's a yes and no. So I got to be honest about this, is that, you know, when you think about it, what you want to be able to do is bring the player in and stretch that hour into 3 hours.
Absolutely,
or 4 hours,
yes,
right? And make it feel like it's something that you just can't pull away from. But there's no question that when you think about how long a mission is, or you think about how long a given quest is, or you think of how long a micro story is, there's a sweet spot. And you want to be able to make sure that the fidelity that you put into a character is reasonable and proportionate to the amount of time that the players are going to spend with that character. So you definitely have to put in opportunities for you to be able to go in and just snack. And play it and then walk away. But the thing is that we definitely want that snack to be a carb. We want you to come back and feel like you're hungry and you want more.
And is there a real science to that? Do you have?
Oh, for sure.
Do you have play testers that sort of, or focus groups?
We have an army of people that talk about that and work with us on that and talk to us about how sticky something is or how fun it is. Or the important thing is that the conversation needs to return to fun. Right? I know that we're having a lot of earnest conversations about subject matter and things that are going on in the world today. But it's true that a lot of this stuff still needs to be escapist and still has to give you the opportunity to go in and have fun. Like, when I pick up a game, when I play a game, I just want to go in, I want to forget the world. I want to just play and have fun.
Well, I think the way that Far Cry works is that you throw in Pagan Min and you throw in Voss, and that's what we remember about the overall experience. But our moment-to-moment and like next-day conversations are about what kinds of crazy shit we did the night before in Far Cry. And so you work on two levels with this franchise.
We absolutely do. But when they talk, the language they're going to use is, I flew a plane and I blew this thing up. I grabbed Boomer and this is what we did together. And it's
I took out 8 outposts.
Exactly. And it's a difference between sort of experience and memory of that experience. We want you to be able to have the best experience that you can author, but we want you to be able to have a memory of somebody that you went against.
What's your best hope for Far Cry 5?
For me, I just think that I want people to be able to play it, and I want people to be able to enjoy it. Do I have this big picture idea of Far Cry 5 needs to say this and it needs to mean this to people,
or sell this?
So I made the mistake of making a bet about how many units a game would sell before.
Yeah.
And it cost me a tattoo.
No shit. Where is it?
Right here. So this is from Far Cry. This is from Far Cry 3. It's actually the quote from Alice in Wonderland.
Okay.
About going down the rabbit hole.
Okay.
And I bet the number of units we would sell, and we went way past that number.
That's crazy.
So I had to get the tattoo.
That's great. That's a
So,
great reason to get a tattoo.
I've learned not to make that mistake
Yeah.
in prognosticating how many units there's going to be. So in this case, I'd like it to be huge. I'd like it to be a huge game. Selfishly, I wanted to sell exactly one more unit than Assassin's Creed.
Right.
And so I think that, the game is huge. I think people are going to love it. And I think that we've tapped into something, touched something that people are feeling in today because of what's going on in the news.
Yes.
And I'm not exactly sure how we did that.
Yeah.
I would love to tell you that it was a bunch of smart people absolutely thinking this is what it's going to be in the future.
Yeah.
It's not how it was.
Right.
I think we just kind of were swimming in the same water as everybody else and
Yeah.
have a chance to reflect on that in the world and build something creatively.
Did you hear that hate somewhere? Did you hear the anger and the what made that happen for you? What clicked for you?
For me, it was absolutely. We've talked about this a bit, but I think that I've told the story about when I was a kid and kind of looking up at the Soviet Union and the U.S. locked in this titanic struggle.
Right.
And the feeling as a little kid of feeling powerless against it.
Yeah.
And I remember.
Yeah, my mom used to take me on peace walks in the 80s. It was the same
it was
thing.
like really like
Yep.
you think about 81 through 83, 84.
Yep.
It was like there was a real sense that it
Absolutely.
was all going to go to shit.
Yeah, yeah.
And that we were all going to be left on our own.
I can't believe how many protests have to happen today, right?
It's
every weekend there is something else. Yeah.
All I know is that feeling from back then when I was a kid came back.
Yeah.
And I think it came back for me like 10 years ago and started to get stronger and stronger with this feeling
Because
of like
you were
dread.
worried for your kids.
Yeah. And so yes, it's partially that you have a family and you grow up and all of a sudden all the things that you love can be taken from you.
Yeah.
But it's also partially looking at the environment around you and becoming aware that as a citizen or as a citizen of the world, you've got to be looking at this stuff. And so I don't know exactly how we tapped into it, but
is there a Far Cry fan base that you heard from or got, comments from or commentary from that made you kind of sort of realize that there was this much open hostility and open aggression towards a government?
I don't think it came from anything to do with Far Cry. I think it just came from
observing,
being around and looking around and seeing stuff and hearing conversations,
right.
hearing what people were talking about. And specifically for me, where I really heard a lot of those conversations was with the subprime mortgage collapse,
right,
in 2008, 2009. When you were sitting around in a restaurant or you were walking around or you were on a bus or you're on a subway and you're listening to people talk, people were really pissed off.
Right.
And really disenfranchised with where in the hell were people watching that our legacy, that our life was protected.
Yeah.
And they were really pissed off. And some of the things that they were saying were not things that I'd heard before,
right.
or were things that I'd heard before when I was a kid and didn't understand.
Right.
And so just that, I think, left a really indelible mark on me in particular. And when I started kicking around the idea of going to the States, I think that was some of the language that was coming.
Yeah.
I had no clue how things were going to go. I had no clue how far the pendulum was going to swing.
Yeah.
But we definitely tapped into something.
Do you feel like there might be, because there is, obviously the United States and Canada are huge markets for the Far Cry game, do you feel like there might be this out of nowhere surprising sympathy for the father and the cult, and an identifying sort of aspect there that says, well, they're right to set up their outposts and their camps like that?
If it happens, and it could happen, I would be intrigued to see that because, when we built this character and we asked Greg to be a part of making this character, he definitely has a charm to him, and you can write the words, but if they're not given correctly or if they aren't given in a way that's meaningful, you're lost.
Right.
And he gave them in a way that's meaningful. And
right.
we definitely have moments in the game where people are playing it and they're going, I hate this guy, I hate this guy, I hate this guy, I understand this guy, I kind of like this guy, I want to be this guy, I hate this guy again.
Yes.
And you run this gambit of emotional roller coaster with him. Where I really feel that, the nuts and bolts of where I feel that, is that we spent a lot of time on Far Cry 3 introing the game and making you feel like, and I remember that time very specifically of Jason sees his friends in the sort of the context video, and you see the guys and you meet all the characters, but you're really not going to get to know them that fast.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you kind of wake up and you're in the cage, and there's your brother Grant, and then Grant is taken away from you super, super quick, and then you're kind of left alone, and Voss is like, run, Forrest, run. And we went over that forever to make that sing.
Yeah.
And then on Far Cry 4, it was, well, whatever you do, it can't be that.
Yeah.
And we kind of beat the we created the stick that we bit ourselves with.
Yeah.
And so for us on Far Cry 5, what we're looking to do is just say, like, right from the beginning, just make sure that you have tension.
Yeah.
But make sure you also give the player the opportunity to just explore. So tension, where you're exploring, is not easy to pull off.
Right.
Because all of those moments, and I think that getting back to what you were saying is, like, there's an easy way to do things, which is to copy and or borrow from what's been done. You look at some of the TV shows right now, and with what they did with Game of Thrones, where they take great characters and then they just kill them early.
Yes.
And you're invested in them and then they're gone, and then you're like, whoa, wait a minute, this is new. Now you watch a lot of television shows and they're going, great characters, kill them early, they gotta die. Which is, 5 years ago, impossible to pitch.
Yeah.
Right? We have to make sure that what we're doing is there's a danger to hearing a critique on what you're doing and becoming entrenched in the yes or no of it.
Right.
Remove the critique,
Yeah.
and then truly start thinking about doing something new,
Right.
and different.
Because ultimately it's yours, right? You're the creator. You're building it for people.
Yep.
But you and your team having to work in a singular kind of direction, which is almost impossible.
Yeah.
And that's the work of it, right?
Yep.
Is to sort of get this army of people going in that direction.
Yep.
It's yours, and you have to feel that pride. You have to feel that.
For sure, there's no question. I just think that for us, when it's this big, I want that yours to be inclusive, right? I want it to be us. And the thing is the older you get, and you start to look at the opportunities that you've got to tell a story, and I'm manic about telling a story and making it feel interesting. You know that you don't get that many chances.
Yeah.
These are big waves that we're riding right now, and they don't come along all that often. And I think that part of the danger of some folks who are thinking about stories or thinking about what they're building creatively is looking at everybody else and saying, well, we got to beat that, got to beat that, got to beat that. And I do it too.
Yeah.
As long as we sell one more than AC.
Yeah. He's coming for you, Ash.
Yeah.
He's got you in his sights, man.
But the truth is that, you know, this is an amazing chance that we all have.
Yeah.
Like, this is a dream job.
Yes.
Right? And you gotta be a big kid.
Yeah.
You gotta enjoy it. Like, there's the chances of kind of being able to land at UB Montreal and work on a franchise like Assassin's Creed, like Watch Dogs, like For Honor, like Far Cry, are not huge when you look at it. And you gotta enjoy it, and you gotta really not take it for granted. And when you look at the other folks who are coming up, the other people who are coming up, and they've got ideas, you can't be that person who, well, I had to work for it, and I had to suffer, so you have to suffer. It's gotta be, look, tell me your ideas, which is not a natural human response. So you got to try and listen, and that's super hard to do sometimes. When you're going as fast as we're going.
Right. Well, we won't keep you any longer, my friend. You
All
got to get back to your writing. Dan Hay is an amazing person to sit down with, and we can't wait for Far Cry 5, my friend.
Awesome.
The end is upon us. I shall lead you to the gate, for you are my children and I am your father.